This is PTV World. I am Syed SHABAHAT, and you're watching Fault Lines. The global climate change is having its impact on planet Earth to a remarkable extent, an extent to which it has not been recorded before. And I'm saying this because there are a number of wildfires now that are getting out of control. For instance, wildfire in Algeria has already claimed 34 lives. Let me remind you that there are 97 incidences of wildfire in Algeria that are now going to affect some part of Tunisia as well. And the temperature in parts of Algeria where the wildfire has happened has exceeded 57 degrees Celsius. You heard me right, 57 degrees Celsius. Also, the fact that some parts of Canada and Italy are also facing separate events of bushfires. These bushfires have come after the remarkable height of temperatures that have been recorded. It is one of the highest temperatures recorded ever since we have started recording the temperatures. Let me also remind you that there is a wildfire going on in Greece and some parts of the United States. Particularly the Valley of Death has recorded 56 degrees Celsius of temperature. In some parts of China, the temperature has also soared beyond 50 degrees centigrade. What exactly is happening and what are the consequences of all of this menace that the mankind has created? Team Fault Lines have prepared a package. Watch the package before I bring my first guest to the program.
Climate change is supercharging extreme climate extremes around the world as scorching weather gripped three continents, whipping up wildfires, torrential rains, and threatening to topple temperature records. These rising temperatures are already driving fundamental and almost certainly irreversible changes in ecosystem across the world. According to a rapid attribution analysis from the World Weather Attribution Initiative, the heat hell searing parts of United States and southern Europe would have been virtually impossible without climate change, while climate change made China's heat wave at least 50 times more likely. Pakistan, despite its contribution of only 0.9% to global greenhouse gas emissions, is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. According to the International Energy Agency, a global energy watchdog, greenhouse gas emissions continue to increase year on year. The rate of growth has slowed slightly, but energy-related CO2 emissions were still up almost 1% last year. The rains have returned a year after climate-induced downpours inundated at 1.1/3 of Pakistan, killing more than 1,700 people. The floods also caused $30 billion in damage last year. Pakistan is proactively engaging in international climate forums, intensifying diplomatic efforts to secure funding and strengthening partnerships with other countries to collectively address this global issue. While the government of Pakistan's efforts for the rehabilitation of flood victims has shown commendable results, international community has to bear responsibility of helping developing world in mitigating climate crisis.
Ladies and gentlemen, my first guest in this program is Mr. Jayanta Bhasu, who is a renowned journalist. Mostly he's based in Canada, but today he's joining me from India over the phone. Jayanta Bhasu has a remarkable career of covering environmental issues as an expert journalist and has been a part of many of the international conferences on the subject. Jayanta Bhasu, I welcome you to the show, sir. Sir, are we at a point of no return in our fight that we are fighting, because the world climate is actually apparently getting out of control? We are observing one of the worst heat waves of our memory.
I don't think that the time has gone yet. If you look at the several scientific reports, they clearly suggest that this is the key period we are right now in. I think by 2030 we need to cut down the emission to a large extent, and by 2050 you need to completely neutralize the carbon emission, the greenhouse gas emission. The process has started, but I think the process is very slow. The big countries, the annex countries, they need to kind of buck up and provide more money. And if you look at the solution, to me the solutions are there. But number one is money. Number one is finance. You need to put a lot of money into the process, and the large countries have to play their role. They have to play their whatever kind of historic responsibility they have. They have to stand up to that and then do that what is to be needful. And apart from that, I think technology. technology is very important. So the number one, finance; number two, technology. And here also comes the negotiation part. I think the if you look at the data, the South Asian countries, be it India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, they are the worst sufferers. But we don't have a kind of a South Asian group or an Asian group. So I think time is up when we go beyond our geopolitical, whatever kind of differences that we have, and form a regional group which will talk about, which will demand the regional own position, and just like the Africa does. If you look at the African countries, they have been fighting elsewhere, but when they are coming to the global meeting, they are talking in singular voice. I think same needs to be done for the Asian countries, and all the countries are suffering. India is suffering, Bangladesh suffering, Pakistan suffering. So it's high time that these countries kind of stand together and put up their demand in the global platform. We have seen that has been done during the Sharm el Sheikh conference, when loss and damage demand was put up with the developed countries. But now I think is for the wider negotiation scenario, this has to be done. That's very important, as I said, along with the finance and the technology.
So, do you believe it is an unusual summer and the heat wave is unprecedented? Do you believe this is something that we had not anticipated to happen?
Yes, it does. I think it is a very, very unusual July. And if you look at the data, it's very clear. Greece is having an extremely high temperature, more than 40 degrees centigrade. The southern US is also burning more than 41 degrees centigrade. I was looking at the data and I found that some cities are having even 46 degrees centigrade, and a city like Phoenix is having 43 degrees centigrade consecutively for 25 days. So it's not really usual, not at all usual. It's very clear. And not only that, and you will also find that there's been kind of apart from the heat wave is also becoming more intense. The temperature, highest temperature of heat wave is increasing by about 1 to 2.5 degrees centigrade. And also there is a lot of people being affected by heat wave. If you remember, last year in heat wave, in Europe only, more than 62,000 people died. And apart from the heat wave part, if you look also at the fires, Canada is having a lot of fire, and there's also been fire incidents in US, and they are being, now the scientists are very clear about it. They are saying that these are not really accidental events; these are being attributed to climate change, the fossil fuel. There's also the El Nino factor, but I think the fossil fuel factor is actually the dominant one. Clearly, if the world has to survive, it has to cut down on the fossil fuel in whatever way it can. And not only that, apart from the heat wave, and apart from the fire, also you'll find that there has been, in India, there has been flash flood. There has been a huge rainfall in the northern part of India. The cities like Delhi and the states like Rajasthan are being suffering, and even the part of India where I do live in Kolkata, in the eastern part of India, it was also very unusual kind of warming condition. I think in the last month, in June, we are having the uh, highest ever uh, night temperature ever being recorded. So clearly, the world is being impacted by climate change. And if you look at the reports, the AR6 report, the WMO report, they were being suggesting for some time. AR6 report categorically said that already the world temperature is more than 1.2 degree above the benchmark of 1850 to 900. And also the WMO report recently has stated that the world temperature will be more than 1.5 degree higher anytime soon within 2030. So now there is no skepticism, so no question to be asked. Clearly, climate change has is trying is playing havoc with the global temperature. The extreme weather events are on the increase, and this July is completely underlines that phenomena.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jayanta Bhasu, for being guest in our program. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll join you back with second segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 100 days ago, we had done a show on Sudan's war, and we had stated that this war might be one of the toughest and difficult wars that one of the African countries is facing. And the reason behind it is that it is the Sudani army which is fighting against its paramilitary forces called RSF. RSF was raised by Omar al-Bashir, who was martial administrator of the country, remained in power for straight 30 years, and before going, he tried to overpower his military by raising another force that became a problem for the country. At this moment, this conflict has crossed 100 days of violence that has remained unabated. 3.1 million people have fled so far. The rest of the people who are stuck inside the eye of the storm are facing multiple problems. One is that the war is unstoppable, it's causing damage to the civilian population. Second challenge is that Sudan is facing one of the most serious droughts of its history. And third is that a flash flood caused by rainfall that is coming to the country after a very long time, after a very long patch of drought, is supposedly going to, anticipated to create more problem for the people living in the country. Norwegian Refugee Council, according to the official estimate, has already helped out 248,000 people, but millions of more requires our attention and support. To talk about this very pertinent issue, I have first invited Yasser Zadan. Yasser is a lecturer at National University in Sudan and a PhD candidate at University of Washington in the United States. Yasser Zadan, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you, SHABAHAT, for having me on Frontline.
Yasser, what is the situation of 100 days of fighting between the two sides in Sudan at the moment?
Yes, the humanitarian situation is collapsing, and it's very dire. The hospitals are in a much need for like medicines, and people are struggling to get just food and water. For example, in the city of Bahri in Khartoum, water has been cut off for more than 90 days. So the situation is really threatening, and it's developing every day. One of the problems also, like the RSF militia, like 2 days ago, they just attacked even the MSF convoy that was supposed to deliver medicine to the only functioning hospital in Khartoum. It's a Turkish hospital in Khartoum. So things are getting very bad, and of course, like I think the NGOs, international NGOs, international community have not yet responded in a way that could actually elevate those difficulties.
Have any ceasefire agreement or truce taken place between the two warring sides so far, or any serious efforts have been made by an external party to bring both of these parties on a table?
Yes, there have been many ceasefire talks in Jeddah, sponsored by Saudi Arabia and the United States. However, these talks have been unsuccessful. They failed to achieve a lasting ceasefire. And I think most probably because each side believed that they can win this war. Also, the problem of this ceasefire on Sudanese people, it actually gives the RSF an opportunity to loot their houses and to get into their houses because there is no actual fighting happening. And because of this now, the army is demanding that the RSF leave civilian houses and leave hospitals in order to actually sit in negotiation table.
So, out of what you say, Yasser, the situation inside Sudan, the humanitarian situation, would be adverse. What do you know of the humanitarian situation inside the country at the moment?
So, unfortunately, kind of like the international humanitarian focus moved away from Sudan during the past months. It was just like they didn't give Sudan that much focus it needed. But we see the UN, UNICEF, the MSF, and also the Norwegian aid organization, USAID as well. They are pledging money to border areas, to border countries of Sudan. However, those has not yet capitalized in terms of helping people in the border areas, refugees in the border places, and also medicine and first aid supplies to Khartoum health system. We need more of humanitarian aid, and we need neighboring countries to actually took an initiative to even just put border refugee camps. There is no border refugee camps in the border in Egypt. Egyptian now they close their border on Sudanese people. Also the eastern border, the western border. We need more efforts by the neighboring countries to address this issue, and of course sponsor and help by the international community who actually have the ability to do much more.
And Yasir, which areas are the most adversely affected one? Because I remember when we spoke last time, there was all the fight was within the capital. So what is the situation at the moment?
Yes, Shahabat, I think the most affected areas are Khartoum, the capital, of course, where the fighting is happening, but also in Western Darfur, which has seen much of the racial killing and genocidal action of the RSF. So these two areas are the most hit by the war. There's also, in addition to that, the areas where civilians has take refuge in northern Sudan, in Medani, southern of Khartoum. So these places were not they were not ready to actually receive all of these displaced people, and so it's also there is a kind of these places are strained by the arrival of many Sudanese people who left Khartoum seeking refuge there.
Do you see any relief in the line of sight? Do you see anticipate any ending of this war?
International image because of their atrocities. When we spoke about this war, when we had our last interview, Shahabat, the international community looked at RSF as an equal actor in this war. But now with what the RSF has done in Darfur, with the atrocities in rapes and all of the mass killings of civilians in Khartoum and elsewhere, the RSF now is under great pressure, is under great scrutiny, and that has led them to actually, I think they're going to surrender their position, and they will agree to leave the people houses and their hospitals and civilian buildings. So we can see that happening in the next few weeks. There's also a good development on the civilian side, the political side, is that the civilian alliances that had many differences after the war, now they're agreeing to sit together, because I think in order for this war to end, there should be a civilian broader alliance that actually reject the RSF kind of trajectory, the RSF agenda, and the RSF project, which has not been there in the first days of the war. But we're seeing this now, which is a great development.
And are you aware of the humanitarian efforts being made by different organizations? Do you believe there is a need to do something more?
Yes, Shahbat, I think there is much needs to be done in terms of the humanitarian efforts. The focus shifted away from Sudan for a bit because the prolonged fighting, of course, but we need to bring back the focus and attention of international humanitarian actors. Borders should be addressed by bordering countries. There should be some kind of refugee camps that actually receive Sudanese people fleeing and actually give them health care and also support. There's some actions needs to be done by the international community and the international humanitarian effort by the UN and also other aid organizations to actually deliver aid to Khartoum city, which is like a besieged city now. The MSF is doing a great job, The Red Cross also should actually do more, and also they should also address the people in the border. People now are stuck in the northern border with Egypt. There's some refugee camps in the border with Chad. There's also refugee camps in the border with Ethiopia. So these people should be looked after. There should be some coordination between the international organization to provide speedy healthcare and health support. I think this should be looked differently. Is that Khartoum as well needs also to be at the center of the humanitarian effort as well. In Darfur, of course, we need to prevent a famine that actually could happen in the capital city of Khartoum or in Darfur.
Thank you very much, Yasser, for being part of the show today.
Thank you, Shahbad, for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was Yasser Zidan, who was joining me from Jeddah, where he's currently living after evacuating his country since the inception of war. I'm now joined by another expert, Eman Bezre. She's joining me from London. She's an expert of political risk analysis and an expert of the African region as well. I welcome you to my show, Ms. Eman Bezre.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Ms. Eman, what's the background of this war? Why this fight started to begin with?
Yes, so the clashes that we're witnessing now erupted in April of this year, and it is between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, led by Daglo or Hamiti. So his name is General Muhammad Hamdan Daglo, or known as Hamiti. The Sudanese armed forces are commanded by the General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and it appears that the conflict is over a power struggle between Daglo and al-Burhan. It is also essential to note that Sudan has been experiencing instability for quite some time now, and even before the fall of the long-standing President Omar al-Bashir, who was ousted in 2019 by rebellion, there's been a struggle to establish, since then there's been a struggle to establish a transition to a democratic civilian-led government. Now in 2019, the Rapid Support Forces under, as I mentioned, Hamiti leadership cooperated with the irregular armed forces, the Sudanese armed forces led by Burhan to oust Bashir. Then there was a power sharing agreement between the civilians or the civilian leaders who participated in this rebellion and the army, which ended, unfortunately, in a coup in October 2021. And since then, there's been problem between Hamiti and al-Burhan, especially that Hamiti has supported a transitional plan that was not approved by Burhan. So that's the core of the conflict. And as you mentioned, it doesn't look like it will end anytime soon.
Now, militarily, who stands where in this very complex situation? You see any clear winners in this conflict as yet?
So this is changing rapidly on the ground, but the status quo at the moment is the following. So in Khartoum specifically, it appears that the battalions of the Sudanese army have been clearly absent from the street, leaving much of the capital to the Rapid Support Forces. So you know, the forces that are not part of the army. This goes as well for strategic cities and large cities like Bahri and Durman. So these three cities are mostly controlled by the Rapid Support Forces. Bear in mind that the Sudanese armed forces are composed of almost 200,000 soldiers, which means almost double the number of the Rapid Support Forces, and still the Sudanese soldiers are finding themselves outnumbered in these cities. it's the other major locations which the rapid support forces have taken control of is a significant portion of the presidential palace, the headquarters of the state media, for example, and one of the bases that used to be an oil terminal, but the rapid support forces turned it into a base for operations. And just at the beginning of this month, the rapid support fighters conducted an assault on Al Yarmouk. I'm sure you've heard about this, which is one of the Sudan's largest military complex used for manufacturing weapons and also storing ammunition. So the rapid support forces are exerting their power and taken over strategic locations. Also, the conflict has spread into Darfur, leaving the country on the verge of a civil war, which we'll talk about it in a bit. However, the military, the Sudanese army, still is in control of one of the important air bases called Wadi Saidna, from which the aircrafts conduct aircrafts fly from to attack or to target rapid support forces bases and locations.
And what is the situation for a common man living in Sudan? Is there any relief in the line of sight?
So, I mean, in Sudan, there's an existing dire humanitarian situation from all these conflicts that happened in the past 30 years. So the country's like the humanitarian situation, the dire humanitarian situation is being exacerbated at the moment by both groups refusing to comply with the ceasefire agreements brokered by the U.S. And Saudi Arabia. We've also seen the Sudanese government, specifically from the side of Burhan, the army, the military commander, refusing any mediation from the side of Kenya, for example, and they refused allowing peacekeepers into the country. So the situation is bad. Some media reports are saying that almost 3 million civilians have been displaced, and those who have not been displaced are facing a dire situation because like you mentioned, the conflicts are in the streets. Access to clean water is scarce. Access to medical facilities is almost impossible. Hospitals are being constantly targeted, looted. The same goes for civilian property. So I've seen social media users claiming that the rapid support forces are looting their houses, they're robbing their residences and cars, and using it to patrol in the streets. So you're using the vehicles to patrol in the street. On the side of the Sudanese army, they're also conducting operation against the rapid support forces in a highly dense areas where most of the casualties is civilians. So, the civilians are caught in between these two forces and living a very difficult situation. Just one final thing, that most of these refugees and displaced people are moving to Egypt and Chad, and the situation there is also very difficult. So they're not being given the aid that they need at this situation.
So what you're telling us that these refugees have not been received with open arms by the countries where they are migrating at the moment. Is that what you said?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what I'm seeing is that there's no government response. There's no huge government response, but there is a response from international organizations that are installing medical centers on border to support the refugees, and also tents on these borders to welcome refugees, mostly women and children. In Chad, most of them also are from the sub-Saharan ethnic groups who are afraid for their lives from the Rapid Support Forces, which is mostly composed of the Arabs.
This is a very pertinent point. You have just said that the civil war is more likely while the nation is in eye of an extreme conflict. Why do you say so, and how do you supplement or qualify your argument?
Absolutely. So in order to explain this, I need to tell you more about the Rapid Support Forces. So the Rapid Support Forces was established in 2003 to fight a rebellion in Darfur. The rebellion was led by sub-Saharan ethnic groups, and the Rapid Support Forces was called at that time Janjaweed, mostly composed of Arab militiamen, Arab tribesmen, who wanted to side with Bashir and end the rebellion. So they are very notorious, and their name is linked to a wide range of atrocities against sub-Saharan ethnic groups in this region. Bashir, however, rebranded this group and named it the Rapid Support Forces. So he stripped the name of Janjaweed from it and treated it as reorganized it, the whole group, as a paramilitary group. But the memory of the Janjaweed, the memory of the Rapid Support Forces and their atrocity is still there. And to make matter worse, obviously, as I mentioned, the conflict has spread into Darfur, but also the governor of West Darfur, Khamis Abakar, from what I remember, who is from a sub-Saharan ethnic group, was killed on 15th of June, which is very troubling and alarming, because this could let some young sub-Saharan, some young men from sub-Saharan ethnic groups to bear arms and start to think of protecting themselves and their properties against the Rapid Support Forces, because the governor of West Darfur was killed following some criticism directed at the Rapid Support Forces. Although the Rapid Support Forces declined that they've been involved in his killing, but the allegation is there, and it's sort of clear for everyone that he was assassinated following his comments.
Thank you very much, Aman Bezri, for being a guest in our show.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll join you back with the last segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back to the last segment of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, today for the first time we are going to touch upon a matter that pertains to the Latin American continent. And we are talking about a very beautiful country of Brazil. Brazil has become a center of the narco trade or drug trade, which the Latin American continent is quite famous for. In the past, we have heard about the Colombian and Mexican gangs that are dominating the drug business of the world. But the recent developments that have taken place in Brazil have been quite shocking. And let me share a few statistics with you. Now, recently, there was an operation done by the law enforcement agencies in Brazil where 80 million euros worth of narcos have been seized. In another instance, 17 tons of cocaine linked to various groups have been found out. There was then a complete research, complete search and destroy operation in which Brazilian government have found out 37 properties, 173 vehicles, and one aircraft have been seized. 147 individuals have been found involved in it, whose bank accounts have been frozen, and also 66 corporations have been held responsible for support of the drug trade. This narco trade is quite a serious problem, and the reason we are discussing it in Fault Lines is that not only there are armed gangs behind this narcotics trade, but also this money flows down to non-state actors who then use it to create further disruption in very peaceful state of affairs of these societies. I am now joined by Ms. Maria Zuppolo, who is joining me from Brazil. Maria is an Italian journalist and analyst based in Brazil since 2007. She writes for Militant Wire Network. Maria's investigation projects on terrorism, and she has been a part of Euronews, AFP, The Guardian, and many other news agencies in the past. Maria, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Maria, first tell us about the background of this issue. We understand that Latin America has a background of narco trade, and we also understand that it has been the hub of narco business for quite a while. So tell us about the background of this issue.
Yeah, I mean, Latin America is the main hub in the world about drug trafficking because we have three countries that produce cocaine. There are Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. But what is interesting is that other countries, like for example Brazil, where I'm based, became over the years hubs for the logistic to Europe and United States. Why? Because historically, as you know, Mexico and Colombia were under pressure of US authorities, so cartels and criminal groups decided to decentralize in other underestimated countries like Brazil. And for example, in the last 10 years, we could see the port of Santos in the São Paulo state becoming the main hub for cocaine smuggling to Europe. And obviously, Latin America turned itself as a magnet for criminal groups from all over the world. I'm thinking about, for example, Italian Mafia, which is very powerful. Calabrese Mafia and 'Ndrangheta has its roots in Brazil, but sent brokers all over the region.
But Maria, what I understand from your conversation gives birth to another question, and that is that how Brazil has become a center of this narcotics trade, because Brazil does not have a reputation, did not have a reputation for being a hub of the narco trade.
Exactly. If you look at the story, I mean, if you look at the chronology of cocaine trafficking, since the 80s, with the mobster, Italian mobster Buscetta, that escaped to Brazil, it started here, began here, it was a pioneer, a cocaine ring, and then he was arrested, so the story ended up. But it means that since the 80s, international criminal groups understood the potential of the region, the potential of countries that were apparently far away from reproduction. And now what we can see is that we have Italian Mafia, Albanian Mafia, we have criminal groups from United Kingdom operating here, because the dirty cake of drug smuggling has a potential where everybody can get his money.
And definitely all these narcotics coming to Brazil are not always exported abroad. I'm sure some part of it is penetrating in the Brazilian society. That must be a major concern for Brazilian government.
Yeah, I mean, historically, Brazil is the second country in the world for cocaine consumer. As you know, here, the population is consuming crack, which is a derivative of cocaine, very cheap, and there is a big population of drug usury in Brazil. But what we are seeing in the last 6 months is that some Mexican cartels, like for example Sinaloa cartels, began their operation here to train the local criminal groups, like for example the First Command of Capital, Primero Comando da Capital, PCC, to cook synthetic drugs. I'm talking about fentanyl and other chemical and synthetic drugs that are really entering the Brazilian market. As you know, Brazil is also a kind of, criminal groups here are using Brazilian consumer as a sort of guinea pigs for the European market. So what we are seeing is that they launch the fentanyl during the carnival time, which is the perfect time, because people want to celebrate. There are parties everywhere. So it was an easy way to introduce this new drug. And now they are trying to prepare different versions of fentanyl they call canine, but the result is the same. People are dying and people are becoming more addicted.
The Mexican drug gangs have also immense reputation. Do you believe that these cartels are now getting decentralized? And if so, what are your concerns toward this decentralization of these big cartels in this regard?
Actually, I'm referring mostly to Mexican cartels. We can see their presence in Chile, in Ecuador, in Brazil, Paraguay. So they are trying to gain other markets, making alliances with other criminal groups able to provide them the logistic that they need. And what we are seeing recently is that Mexican cartels are trying also to invade the European market. Several chemical laboratories have been confiscated by European authorities, mostly in Belgium and the Netherlands, where they found Mexican and Colombian cooks, because as you know, Northern Europe has a knowledge of chemical drugs. I'm referring to Netherlands. So what we are seeing is that an alliance in Europe that allow Mexican cartels to smuggle cocaine to the region, but also to test new synthetic drugs for the European market. As you know, the fentanyl epidemic at the moment, it's only a problem of Canada and the United States. The big concern is that if this production will move to Europe, because as you know, we had the Taliban ban on heroin, which means that the European market will be impacted by this measure.
Maria, let's talk about Eastern Europe for a while, another destination of these narcotics. I'm sure you must be aware of the problem that are happening in Eastern Europe because of this narcotics trade.
Yeah, you know, Serbian and Albanians always cooperated historically with Italian mafia, mostly for marijuana and hashish. But now, since the Latin American cocaine market is huge, they are part of the game. We could see their presence in a very strong way in Ecuador. Ecuador is in the hands of Albanian criminal groups. Some of them have been arrested by local police, but actually they are really powerful there. 2 years ago, here in Brazil, in São Paulo, there were a murder of an Albanian drug trafficker, meaning that there is a conflict now between different criminal groups, local and probably Italians. But Albanians and Serbians are important also for the European side, because once the drugs are bought here in Latin America, you need to smuggle into Europe. So they are really good. Their presence has been seen, for example, in the British market.
And why Europe has not been able, the heartland Europe has not been able to take concrete steps in this regard?
Because drugs is money, and money is power. So, for example, in Italy, we have a huge problem of mafia infiltration into the government. It means that we have corruption, we have people working for public institutions that actually made a double game and work also for mafia. And Italian mafia was really brilliant in managing some parts of the country. I'm talking about Gioia Tauro in southern Italy. Gioia Tauro has been managed by Italian 'Ndrangheta for many years, and it allowed them to ship tons and tons of cocaine with a really minimum control. And then the rest of Europe, the problem is that we have some country like Italy where mafia is really powerful, but all Europe participated to the game, because money laundering operations by Italian mafia are made in Europe, in Germany, in Switzerland, in Dubai. So as I said, it's a dirty cake, and everybody has its good piece of cake.
And lastly, Maria, do you believe this money is pouring down to the non-state actors in different parts of the world?
Yes, sure, because as you know, when you get tons and tons of money, because one of the problems that mafias and criminal groups have, how to manage the money that you get from a drug trafficking. So, for example, in Brazil, we have money laundering operation directly in Brazil. So, 'Ndrangheta people buy cocaine and then invest in Brazil just for washing operations. But we have other parts of the world. We have Dubai, we have Singapore, Hong Kong. Hong Kong is very critical now. Malta. So as you see, the drug market benefits a lot of country and finance also a lot of governments around the world. That's why it's hard to eradicate.
Thank you very much, Maria Zuppolo, for being guest in our program.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was our last guest who was telling us that the narcotics trade has become a global menace, a problem to reckon with, to deal with for all the governments in the Latin America and the European continent. But let us recall that all the efforts being made in the past have not been able to bring results. In fact, the global size of narcotics trade, the global volume has only increased over a period of time. And as Maria said in the last part of the program, that since there is immense black money involved in this process, it is becoming increasingly difficult for the Western countries as well to deal with this problem. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.